Hello, BookTube. We're back down here in puppy territory for a little more of a history bookshelf tour. We'll just plug along here. Most of you seem to be enjoying it. Those of you who are not interested in history, you're probably not going to find anything of interest in this video, aside maybe from a cameo appearance by my little schnauzer. So let's see. The first book that we have here is big and thick. Oh my. Okay, Richard Evans, The Third Reich at War. He did a trilogy, The Third Reich, The Coming of the Third Reich in Power, and The Third Reich at War. This is the third volume, which is basically a history of the war in the West. He's terrific. It's just fantastic. And for some reason, I kept this volume in the trilogy, but I didn't keep any of the others. So I'm now on the lookout at used bookstores here in town for the Coming of the Third Reich, and especially The Third Reich in Power, which I remember being an engrossing book. I'm amazed I don't have it. And this next one talked about the Third Reich. This is the one to beat. This is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer. It's an enormous book, enormous bestseller. A book written in just the white heat of hatred. A perfect refutation of the contention made by some historians and by readers of history that history is only best written when it's done coldly and unemotionally, objectively. Totally untrue. You can, as we know from Thucydides and Herodotus, you can write a history that's vivid and fantastic and be personally involved, and Shirer is. The book just glows with hatred for the Nazis, but it is fantastic. Just fantastic. What do we got here? Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. This is Max Hastings' Inferno, his big one-volume history of World War II. I'm a big fan, as you know, if you've watched this channel. I'm a big fan of World War II histories. It's an incredible subject. If you take a step back and look at it, you realize it's so much part of the background of our lives that we don't sometimes think it. But if you take a step back and look at it, it's one of the greatest things to happen in human history. And it's in living history. There are people alive who went through it, and we all have relatives that were touched by it in some way or other. I think that's incredible. I think that's just incredible. If you were, for instance, a generation, if I were making these videos in 1908 instead of 2018, I would have had to go back a long way to an absolutely epic event in history, in human history, and we don't in these days. That's why I love World War II. I think studies of it endlessly fascinate me. Okay, all right, this is another one-volume history. This is Robert Leckie, Delivered from Evil. This is his one-volume, very readable history of World War II. Robert Leckie wrote a series of books of military histories of all the wars of America, and they're all really good. They're all really worth reading. But Delivered from Evil I probably like more than any of the others, although the one volume on the American Civil War is terrific too. Then we have Robert Conant's Justice at Nuremberg. This is another story of the Nuremberg trials, which, you know, even when the war is over in the West, the World War II continues to be epic in every way. This is the war trials in Nuremberg are absolutely mesmerizing reading. And that book's particularly good. I have one other, but this one is really good as well. And what do we got here? Oh, okay. G.W. Bernard. This is The King's Reformation. This is about Henry VIII and the Protestant Reformation, Henry VIII and breaking with Rome. And it's a big, thick, satisfying thing. And one of the reasons that it satisfied me so much is because of something that I've mentioned on this channel many times, a frustration that I have with books dealing with Henry VIII, is that they take the easy way out. They talk about the wives. How many hundreds and hundreds of books about Henry's reign talk about the wives? He went to war. He caused enormous social, political, and religious upheavals. There's more to his reign than just the wives. And this book, I thought it was incredibly refreshing because it's a study of his reign, of some of the important things that happened in his reign. What do we got? Oh, okay, great. All right, this is a classic of World War II history. This is Telford Taylor's Munich, his enormous book on Neville Chamberlain and what happened at Munich. This is, obviously you can tell from the length of this thing that it's a lot more than that. It sets the stage enormously. It goes into huge detail on all the people involved. And there's a lot of follow-through as well. There's a lot of aftermath. This crucial, heartbreaking subject. You can't read it. I don't think you can read it objectively and not have your heart broken, because Neville Chamberlain wanted peace. He was desperate to avoid what he and a lot of other people dimly but nevertheless roughly accurately sensed was the sheer staggering size of the war that might happen if he failed. He had no idea of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He had no idea of the battle on the Russian front. Millions of people dying. He had no conception of that. But even so, his instincts told him that the cataclysm that could follow if I fail at the negotiating table would be so immense as to be worth almost any concession. I don't know that in his shoes I would have done any different. I don't know that you would have. I don't know that a sane person, not Winston Churchill, but a sane person, wouldn't have tried almost anything to avoid war. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible moment for Chamberlain and for world history, for the narrative here, when suddenly becomes clear that you can't negotiate, that you're dealing with a madman who wants the end of the world. And so nothing will happen in good faith, and no concessions will ever be enough. That's a horrible moment when you realize, okay, war then. That's awful. And this book is every detail. It's what 60 years old now? It's quite old. But it's never been equaled, in my opinion, as a study of Munich. I don't think it could be, considering, 1979. That's a long time ago, but this is still the book to get. I often see it in a trade paperback with a grainy black and white photo on the cover. I think that's why I got the hardcover. Although I don't know, if I saw it in trade paperback, I might swap this out. The next one looks new. Oh, it is new. Oh, okay, this is Michael Massing, Fatal Discord. This is Erasmus, Luther, and the debate that sprang up, or that gave rise to the Protestant Reformation. Luther and Erasmus both wanted to reform the church. Erasmus thought it should be reformed from within. Luther wanted to burn it down and start again. And they actually, after a long time respecting each other and avoiding each other and circling each other, eventually they debated each other in written tracts, back and forth. Those make incredibly interesting reading. And this is a big, wonderful book that does the whole subject justice. I was very pleased. What is it, Bean? What is it, huh? What's going on? I'm down in your territory. I am. Want to say hi to your fans? Want to look at the camera? Ooh. Look at your fans. There they are. Oh, good girl. So let's see, what else we got here? Okay, we saw this just recently on this channel. This is Patriot Battles. I love it. What is it, baby? What is it? Just a military history of the American Revolution. Nothing just about it. It's tremendously good at that. And this next one is the same thing. This is a more recent book. Holger Hook's Scars of Independence. Terrific. Just terrific. I think, the folks at Crown must have known the gem they had, because this is really heavy. It's a solidly made book with decal edges and no expense spared with all the interior work. It's just they must have known they had a classic account of the American Revolution on their hands. I can't recommend it enough. I think it came out in paperback just recently. I wonder if I have the paperback here. Well, anyway, now I'm curious to know. The thing is, I have so many books here that I'm not sure that I could spot it right away. I might have sent the paperback to one of you, because I'm not immediately seeing it here. Boy, oh boy, though, what a book. The next two are together. They are James Holland. This is The War in the West, The Rise of Germany and the Allies Strike Back. A 2-volume history of the war in the West. Terrific stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. Can't wait for it to continue. There should be one more volume. And I was kind of expecting that volume this year, but I haven't seen it. Haven't seen any side of it, so it'll probably be next year. And what do we got here? All right, so this is clearly the World War II shelf, with a few exceptions. This is clearly the World War II shelf. And this one is Charles Mcdonald. I mentioned this before. This is A Time for Trumpets. This is his book on the Battle of the Bulge, which we saw on this bookshelf tour a little while ago. We saw Snow and Steel, which is a big 1-volume, history of the Battle of the Bulge. This is much earlier than that, lots and lots more eyewitness interviews and stuff like that. Charles Mcdonald was much more involved personally in the war. This is so Snow and Steel is a great account, but it includes more historical hindsight. This has much less, but more immediacy. So they make great bookends for the subject of the Battle of the Bulge, all the details of the Battle of the Bulge. This madcap drive by the Germans to break out of their obviously inevitable defeat. Somehow, one last throw of the dice just I mean, it caught the Allies by surprise, and for good reason, because it was insanity, and they weren't expecting that. And it makes just terrific reading. Oh, great, okay. All right. This is Samuel Eliot Morrison. This is The Two Ocean War. This is his one-volume condensation of his multi-volume history of the United States Navy and during the war. He was commissioned to write that history on the lines, on ships. He was given a rank and a billet in order to follow battleships into war. It's an incredible thing, an incredible decision on the part of the United States government to put a historian in right at the start and let him do his job. It was an acknowledgement on their part of what I just said, which is that this was an epic thing. This was one of the biggest things in history happening in these men's lifetime, and that there should be a historian watching it all, taking as many notes as possible, and with any luck, avoiding dying. And this is, I strongly recommend the multi-book set, but it's an undertaking, to put it mildly. It's, believe it or not, terrifically readable. You wouldn't think. You'd think it would be all dispatches and notes and details, but it's not. This author never wrote without being interesting. But in this case, it's almost impossible to recommend that multi-volume set. First of all, you're never going to see it, and second, it would take you a year. But this one volume I can recommend. It's too bad. I think it might be out of print. I'd be willing to believe that almost nothing from Samuel Eliot Morrison is still in print. I haven't checked on that, and I almost don't want to. His Columbus biography, I would hate it if that were out of print, but I bet it is, and this as well. And this is big as well. Oh, great. Hugh Sebag Montefiore, his History of the Somme, Into the Breach. Nice big World War I history of the Battle of the Somme. Wonderful. And then this last... Oh, okay, great. This is an English-language translation of The Duke's Assassin, the assassination of Lorenzino de' Medici in 1548. The crime, the broiling upset that led up to it, and also the miserable lives of the assassins afterwards. Just a terrific book. I just kept it because I liked it so much. Why would I get rid of it? Don't start. All right, so that's it for now. That is this shelf. I am now incredibly curious to know if I have a paperback of The Scars of Independence. I'm going to have to look for that and see. But in the meantime, I'll wrap this up, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Book 2.